Welcome to Revenue Mind, a podcast that gives revenue leaders a platform to talk about mental health. I'm personally a big advocate of mental health and hope these insights, stories, and guts to open up, inspire, enlighten, and resonate with you. Now onto the episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Revenue Mind, a podcast where revenue leaders talk about all things mental health. I'm Jolie, your host, and with us is Jonathan. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So before we dive in, what makes you, you?
Ooh, big, broad question. What makes me, me? I think the things that people would probably say on the outside of me would probably be that highly ambitious, highly creative, very curious, always looking for a new challenge, always looking to do something different. I've always got and always had some type of side hustle. So I'm one of those people that naturally gets a little bit bored of things. And so I need some constant challenge in life. And so my wife is Colombian, and I didn't necessarily go with that intention to meet her in Colombia. It was not as easy as, for example, finding someone in the US to be with. And so we had to go through an entire immigration process. And I moved to Spain for a little bit at a point right before that because I wanted to learn another language. And so I thought that would be challenging and interesting. And then I got my MBA and decided to do that at the same time because why not? I was over in Spain. I could learn some stuff and also learn a language. I also started a company in Spain as well. And so I don't know, I've just always had this tendency to pile on more and more stuff to my list. And certainly I've gotten better at reaching that limit, which I think we'll get into a little bit, where you definitely hit that limit and you tap yourself out. And I think I've gotten a little bit better over the years, hopefully, of trying to limit that. But yeah, I think those are some things that people would say about me is probably a good way to position that.
I was talking to Mac Rudden, and he was saying if you're not 20% stressed, then you're probably not following your passions or something along those lines.
Oh, stress is a good thing. You need a little bit of stress. If you don't have some level of stress, then you're not putting yourself in an uncomfortable enough position. And we only learn when we're a bit uncomfortable. And I'm sure at some point when you started this podcast, you were probably a bit uncomfortable. Maybe even now, maybe every episode, who knows? But the point is like that little bit of stress keeps you on edge, keeps you learning and all those good things.
Yeah, for sure. My first interview was Chris Walker.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I was so nervous. My podcast sounds like a robot. I think I just asked questions and then before I knew it, it was over.
Right. And how
Okay.
many have you done since, Chris?
This episode is number 12.
12. And so feeling more relaxed, since certainly seems like you are, right?
Oh my God, totally. It's been absolutely incredible for my confidence. So we're ending to the questions now. Revenue roles can feel always on. How do you flip the switch and truly unplug?
Yeah, truly unplug. At the end of the day, everyone will talk about work-life balance and trying to find some way to separate the two. Or if you've seen the series Severance, this kind of complete separation between work and life, which it just doesn't exist. They're all meshed together. Sometimes I'm working a little bit on the weekends. Sometimes I'm not working as much during the week. Depends on what's going on. But unplugging for me is typically things like working out, going for a run, things like that are good just to get out into the world and take off the headphones, not have a podcast blaring in ears about someone saying something, but instead listen to some music or just take them off completely and listen to the air passing over your ears and stuff. And so things like that, spending time with family, kids. I've got 2 kids. They keep me busy. And so a lot of time, like they create the immediate distraction away from unplugging, so to speak, even though there's really not to me a true, like I'm completely unplugged and not thinking about work. I think I'm always thinking about work at some level, but they certainly will pull you into all sorts of different directions to make sure that they are the front and center and they are the number one person getting all the attention. So if I zone out or get a little bit distracted or look at my phone at times, they'll pull me back to reality and say, no, I'm here. Let's do some stuff. So yeah, I think that's, those are a couple things that I do. Lots of little things though.
That's great. I have 2 dogs.
Yeah.
They'll boot their nose at the door
Uh-huh.
with a toy.
Yep,
And
exactly.
I'm like, I guess I'll take a 5-minute break to play. And then my mom, she said, And you have kids, you want 5 minutes and you just don't get it. You don't get those 5 minutes.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you don't. And I think the analogy for me would be my son, who's the 9-month-old, walking across because he's now crawling and everything. He'll crawl over, and I've got these kind of French doors of glass in front of me right now. And he'll crawl and he'll look at me, and I see him like down in the corner, and then he'll put his hand up like this, and he's got his hand, he's looking at me. And then, of course, naturally, he has to push the door, and the door doesn't really lock that well. So it just opens right up. And then he just crawls under, and he's just sitting there looking at me, sitting on his butt. And he's like, so we're going to play? We're going to do something? And then sometimes, of course, it's on call. So my wife's scrambling in, sometimes in the camera and whatnot. Oh, God. His name's Lucas. Lucas, come on. We got to get out of here. So, yeah, I think those things make fun and authentic. It's even happened on podcasts before. And I told our editor not to even crop it out because like, why do we have to have this perfect version of ourselves all the time? I think LinkedIn is very much that way. We're always presenting our best self. Everything's going well. We're growing. We're hiring. Everything's awesome. Because I think people like those stories more than they do the stories of things not going well, clearly. But yeah, to your point, the dog thing is not too distant from little babies, honestly. Very similar.
That's good to know. I'll keep that in mind. All right. Going to hit you with the hard one now. As review leaders, we tend to obsess over metrics, but there's so much beyond that when it comes to customer relationships. What does real success look like for you beyond the numbers?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because it's so true. I think too often we're looking at the dashboard and it's like number of conversions, number of pipeline, amount of revenue. And there's all these other little things that are happening behind the scenes that just never get brought into discussion ever because a lot of times they're gray, they're more vague, they're hard to really put into a dashboard. But for me, those things are always like, it's like the little moments. I can think of a time where someone will give us a compliment and it's just a one-off thing. It's not results oriented. And they just say something, they'll DM me usually on Slack and say, I just want to say, you guys are an absolute pleasure to work with. Robbie, who's one of our demand gen managers, is just amazing. I'm so glad that you guys hired him and all this stuff. And there's no number attached to it, but it's one of those feel good metrics, so to speak, or qualitative things that you look at. And you just know, okay, cool. If those things are going right and people ultimately like the people they're working with and having a little bit of fun, because if not, then what's the point, right? We can sit here and do all this stuff with talking about numbers all day long. But if we don't like the person we're working with, not having a little bit of fun, then it immediately takes everything away, in my opinion. And so anyway, we try to build in a lot of personality and everything like that and have some fun at Omni, little competitions and all sorts of things like that. But I think it's those like softer qualitative things. And so that client example would be one. A whole bunch of other things. It's just the feeling, like how do people feel? What are they saying? Social media too is a good kind of indicator. What are people saying about us? How are people interacting with us? I think those things are meaningful as well, even though they don't translate into a conversion. When someone says in DMs and says something like, man, I love your content. That last post resonated a lot with me. I am in the exact same position. I'm not looking at that and saying, I think that's going to probably, based off that comment, increase our revenue 23% over the next quarter because I've modeled that and I've created some sense of this generating XYZ number. I'm just saying, hey, at the end of the day, it's great to hear those types of things, not just for the ego, but just like, hey, there's some value there. Like it resonated with someone. That's great. Let's just figure out how to do more of those things. So I think we need to bring those to surface more often. And unfortunately, they're not going to be in a dashboard. They're just going to have to be like, hey, let's do a roll up of all the good things our clients said about us, that we interacted with them on, social media, or just not even clients, but just people in general that are interacting with our brand. I think those are the important things.
Yeah, I love that. I think in revenue and in mental health, and just across the board, like life, the universe, and everything, it's about how you make people feel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's the number one thing. We first are thinking more emotionally, then we try to rationalize purchases. And so emotions come first. And so sometimes we're just really sensing, do I like what this person is saying? Do I like how they approach things? Are they like me? Because we tend to flock together, right? It's the whole idea with social proof with Dale Carnegie and the guy who wrote Influence. You just can't overlook them. And you can't say, hey, the dashboard says X. Now, at the end of the day, one would say as a CEO or co-founder or whatever that, yeah, all those things are great. But if we aren't seeing the right numbers in the dashboard too, then there's a problem. And I would agree with that, right? You got to have a little bit of both. it'd be one thing if everyone's saying all these nice things about you, buying from you or renewing with you and all these other things like that. But usually the byproduct of those types of conversations is revenue, is pipeline, is conversions, people that want value or trust you and your brand to do X, Y, Z for them. And so I think all these things are just little leading indicators that need to get filtered up more. But yeah, it's interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
Pivoting back to your two kids, how has fatherhood flipped your idea of work-life balance upside down?
Yeah, it's definitely changed it a lot. I think the big thing for me and for us, my wife too, because she's right now staying home with the kids full time. I think the thing that's been incredibly tough is that you just realize how little time you have to get the same amount of stuff done. It's just drastic. For example, I'll usually wake up in the middle of the night. I'll usually sleep with my daughter because she usually wakes up. She's having nightmares a little bit more frequently right now. So I usually sleep with her most nights. And when we wake up, she usually wakes up around 6 or 6:30. And so even if I wanted to wake up earlier, sometimes it's tough because I'm tired. I've been woken up a couple times in the middle of the night. And so it's 6 or 6:30 in the morning and she's up. She wants to do some stuff and we don't really want to turn on the TV and just let her zone out. So we want to play and do things like that. So the morning hours are gone. And I used to do a lot of work and prep in the mornings to get the day ready. And that time's just gone away, which one could say maybe it's a good thing. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And same thing with the nights, right? Night routines. I usually end the day around 4 or 5 or sometimes earlier. My wife's usually stressed out. She's tired. She wants some help and all those things. And it's kind of like panic. We got to cook dinner. We got to get the kids fed. We got to bathe them. We got to get them to sleep. And then it's 7:30 or 8 and you're tired and you want a little bit of downtime, just zone out yourself. But then at the same time, get a couple things done. And so I've had to shift my schedule from being more mornings, like really early in the morning doing things, to late night doing some things while the kids are sleeping. And then, of course, just making more time during the day to block out my calendar and say, hey, these are hold times. And again, back to the whole no meeting thing. From 9 to 11, I don't take meetings unless it's an emergency or they're global and I make an exception. But 90% of them, I just block out my calendar, don't meet anyone. And then that kind of gives me back some of that time that I would prep in the morning, but just do it at a different hour. So I think it's the biggest thing that changed. I think every parent would agree with that. Anytime you have kids, it's just a huge responsibility. There's just a lot more time that needs to be dedicated towards them, especially if you want to do it, quote unquote, right.
For sure, what comes to mind for me is balance.
Yeah.
I am very all or nothing. I'll just spend 7 days a week, walk my dog 6 miles, or I might be on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And there was actually a post about that on LinkedIn months ago. He basically said his perfect day,
Yeah.
4:30 a.m., all that jazz, all the perfect setup. And at night, butterflies come out. Just crazy stuff. And then at the end, he had, that's not realistic and that's not life and that's not true. And there are so many variables, including kids, including puppies, including whatever, that completely change that. I don't think there's a thing like a perfect day.
No, I totally agree with that too. There's not a perfect day. We're changing preschools right now. That requires doing tours and change around your schedule to go visit preschools to see if they're good or they're bad or you like them and what the curriculum is and all of those things. And that wasn't part of the plan. Typically, we don't do that. We go to the preschool we've always gone to, but now we're looking at other ones for various reasons. And so, yeah, I think you got to be flexible. I think that goes back to the whole work-life balance thing really not being a reality. I think it just all meshes together at the end of the day. You've got it all happening at the same time. And like I tell my team all the time, at the end of the day, it's really not about the hours you work or when you work, although we do generally work somewhat normal hours. It's really at the end of the day just about results. And are we getting stuff done? And if you can get it done more efficiently and you can do it really quick, cool. Go enjoy the afternoon. But if it's something that takes a little bit longer, then hey, put in a couple more extra hours, get it done, make sure the client's happy or whoever's doing what they need to do. Yeah, those are the important things. So yeah, you got to be flexible in life. It'd be nice if you could plan out everything, wouldn't it? It's like spreadsheet math and marketing world. You can say exactly what the CPCs and conversion rates and yada, 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 and put it all in your little spreadsheet. And things can go completely sideways on you and you've got to change plan.
Exactly. And we all want a playbook for life, but that's not the reality. The quote I actually live by is when John Lennon said, "Life happens when you're busy making plans." And that is so, so true. So going back to our understanding of the concept of work-life balance, how do you make that meaningful for your team?
That's an interesting question. Meaningful for the team. At the end of the day, like, I guess what's the history of why we even did them? I was alluding to it a little bit earlier, I think before we started recording, but the whole reason they originally came up was because people were really burnt out, more stressed, I'd say, during the week when there were a lot of client meetings and Slacks and all sorts of things that were going on. And so the idea was to create a day where like none of that existed. We don't do client meetings on Fridays. We don't do any planned internal meetings. If you want to talk to someone internally, go for it. All good. It's up to you. There's no planned internal meeting. And we try to just keep a minimum of just general chatter as well on Slack and just use it as like a heads down time, or you know what, just taking it a little bit easier on Friday. It's okay to take it easy. We don't need to be hustling and going crazy 24/7. And so I think the meaning came from the idea of people feeling a little more stressed and burnt out during the weeks so that they could regain and feel good going into the weekend a little bit and have a day to recover, if you will. And so that's something we've held to literally from, I don't even know. It was probably the first few months of the company being around. This way back when Jason and I were just running the company and we had no employees or anything like that. And we just said, hey, we don't want to do that. And so we thought selfishly a little bit, honestly, of ourselves and said, I don't know, do we want to have that type of environment for even us? And the answer was no. And then once we, of course, had tired employees, then it was like, I don't want that environment for them either. Like, I don't want them feeling that way. And so anyway, I think that's the idea with it. And so everyone ultimately uses that time the way they want to use it on every Friday and pushes back on clients when they want the time. And like we were saying earlier, sometimes people get angry about that. Like, wait, you don't do meetings on Fridays? Like, what's wrong with you? You know, why? Like, we do meetings on Fridays. We need to meet. This is important. And I think you just have to hold your ground on those things. There's really not too much that's going to burn down to the ground in a day or over the weekend. And most things can wait and are not that urgent. It's just that people are stressed. They got a lot of pressure. And so you gotta hold your guns on those types of things. But yes, I think that's how we extract the meaning out of, meeting Fridays.
That's awesome. Sounds like you built a really nurturing culture.
I hope so. We try to ask all the time. I always wonder if I'm getting straight answers on those things, but I guess I'd say we have a very low churn rate in terms of employees. So I guess that would be the only indicator aside from asking people how they feel and how they're doing and all that good stuff that we know. But yeah, I think so. Lead with respect. Jason have always been more like lead from the trenches versus lead from the ivory tower. If that's an analogy I just created, but lead from the trenches is our approach to just about everything we do. Because at the end of the day, if you're not willing to get your hands dirty, then why should they? Well, that's the way I feel about it. I just have always hated the manager that's not willing to get in there with you and help you out when you need it. And so I think that type of environment passes not only from us, but also through the other team. So we have a demand gen manager who's in the same position. Guess what? If I'm echoing that same thing, like I'm leading in the trenches, I'm going to get in, I'm going to help you. That person's going to do the same thing to say one of the paid media managers. Hey, I'm struggling here. I need some help. Guess what? They're used to the way that Jason and I have set the culture, set the rhythm of the company. Now they're going to do that same thing, or hopefully.
That's great. If you step out of the trenches, it also hurts you because you lose your skills.
Oh yeah, 100%. End of the day, you got to be deadly, especially when you're not all founders are creating content on LinkedIn, but for me, I create a lot of content on LinkedIn as well too well. And so to do that requires me having the stories and getting a little bit dirty sometimes to even say anything. If I didn't do that, then I'd probably have to talk about something different, right? Running and growing a business, hiring employees, or just something different that maybe didn't have a direct dotted line back to the company and what we do. But to be able to write content that's more SME type of content, subject matter expert, you got to get in there and do it. And so I think, unfortunately, there's some leaders and managers out there that have gotten a little bit too removed from that stuff that probably should take a look at getting back into it, which is tough for some. And I do get, there's some reasons why, especially once you get to a certain size where you just can't legitimately jump into all these things. But I do think the direct reports, at least even in a really big organization, you can still jump in and lead in the trenches with your direct reports. Now, maybe their reports and so on and so on down the chain, not going to be that likely. You only got so much time in the day. That type of thing, people respect that a lot. I know I did. One of my managers in the past did that type of thing.
Adam from Bitler does a great job.
Oh, yeah.
The founder led, here's how I'm building it. And I think it's really good for the brand. It's also good for your personal brand. It's just like a whole spectrum of greatness.
Yeah, his works really well because he is like literally, I don't know how big they are now, but yeah, he is in the trenches building that thing every day. Yeah, he's done a great job doing what I think everyone loves is they want to be on the journey with you. They want to understand what you're working on, what you're doing, how it's going. And they want the kind of transparent version of how things are going, not like the fluffy, I typed some words into ChatGPT and expanded on what I wanted to say. They just want to know, hey, Adam, what's your deal, man? What's your POV? How are you approaching this? And I think he talks about a lot of the wins mostly, but he also talks about some of the things that are not going so well. Yeah, I think that type of thing is great. I think there's right now just a huge attack on just trust and authenticity and everything right now in general. There's just so much stuff out there that it's clickbaity, spammy. We're getting inundated with more in-mails and cold calls and text messages now. And it's just like, I don't know, where are the places you go to just get a good, honest opinion and assessment of, is this good? Is it not? What do you think I should do? And I think communities are certainly one answer to that. But I also think just tailoring the type of people you engage with on LinkedIn versus doom scrolling the feed is the way to do it. And I use tools where you can say, hey, like, I want to follow Adam or Alex or whoever. I want all these people on my feed. And when they see something, like, I want to be there and read what they have to say because I know that they're just a genuine anonymous person, or even I've talked to them outside of LinkedIn.
That's so funny. I actually do exactly that. I signed up for Alex Boyd's Aware platform.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great.
Do you use it too?
Yeah. I was on Shield for a while, and I think it was the one thing that they had that Shield didn't that interested me at the time, if I remember correctly. This has been a while now because I've been using it for a bit, was custom lists and Aware. So to the exact thing that we're just talking about right now, it was like, hey, and replies, I think was the other thing as well. So you basically create a dynamic list of all the people that you like, you follow, you're friends with, whatever it may be. And then it curates those posts. And so whether they post in the last day, 2 days, 3 days, or whatever, you've got a whole list of those people so you can engage with them. So you're not just looking at the feed and whatever the algorithm's pushing your way, which these days I feel like the only things you should be doing are posting memes and complex workflows and guides to doing like clay workflows or something. It's interesting what gets trendy on LinkedIn these days. But again, it's not about likes and engagement, right? It's about getting the right people, the right traffic, the right relationships, because in B2B, all these can be worth tens of thousands of dollars to you and also the company in terms of value.
Yeah, for sure. I think I joked in a comment. I was like, I get 500 impressions. It's a good day.
Exactly. I think my rule of thumb on that is looking at engagement rate more than the number of impressions, the number of likes, the number of comments. It's more the quality of comments and then it's more the engagement rate at the end of the day, because we all know that reach it's gone down a bit significantly for all sorts of reasons. One, a lot of people poured more ad dollars from X over to LinkedIn back when Elon took it over. Thought leader ads were also launched last year, which also took up more inventory spots. So a lot of people are spending more money there. And then you just have more people that are posting. Thanks to all the LinkedIn influencers that are telling everyone to post. No one's doing it. So thanks guys for that. But no, I think it's a good thing overall. Getting more people active and whatnot, it's better for the platform. And so more conversations of higher quality. But yeah, I love the Aware, back to your points. It's cool. Great tool.
Yeah, awesome. I love this tangent. I usually don't get to nerd out on marketing on this podcast. So thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna turn back.
Cool.
All right. So just getting back to mental health and revenue. You mentioned signs of burnout in your company. Were they more subtle or were they glaring? And what signs did you see?
It's interesting that there are almost never glaring issues until you really dig deep and ask a couple of follow-up questions. And I'll give you an example. I mean, the first sign is that things are not getting done that should have been done. So we're looking at things that have overdue dates, right? In a project management tool, that would be one very easy, just programmatic way to look at it. Because if things are not getting done, usually means, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, it means that someone has got too much on their plate and they're just not able to get to it in time. The other is we do one-on-ones with all employees every 2 weeks. So not too often where we're talking all the time because we do a lot of huddles and other things like that. So we're honestly always having the conversations of how you feeling, how you doing, what are you struggling with, what can I help out with? Is anyone else dropping the ball? Not to point fingers, but to keep us all accountable. I'm not interested in accusing anyone, but I am interested in knowing if someone's not doing their job or not pulling their weight, it's making it harder for you. Because sometimes it's an issue of there's someone on the team that is just not doing as good of a job as they could be doing. And therefore that's putting more weight, aka leading to burnout for the person that's got to own that additional responsibility. So I think a lot of that happens too, but I think all of it happens through just like good old fashioned conversations like we're having right now and asking some very basic questions and making sure. Biggest thing that I see, honestly, so many conversations are superficial, right? And you even shared something that was pretty vulnerable even before we got recording on this, which I won't repeat. But I think the difference between you sharing that and what most people would say is that most people might say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." And then they might just start talking about themselves or move on. And then I think there are some people out there that would say, "What do you mean? Tell me more." Or what are some of those things that are not so bad? And I think that's really the cool opportunity is because then we get to know each other better. It means I'm actually listening to you and I'm not just thinking about something else and trying to get to the next topic. And same thing's true for employees too with burnout. Then you're saying, hey, great, like Robbie or Jackson or whoever it is on our team, they might say, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. It's nothing. And I'm like, no, tell me like what's going on. And I might even do something. This is an interesting little, I don't know if I'd call it a hack because I hate the word hack, but something that's opens up the conversation a little bit more. And I'm sure you've done this too, but situations where I might be with someone and I know they're not really wanting for some reason to share everything that's going on, but I can tell they're stressed out about something. And I might just share like a little like quick thing that I'm going through. Hey, if you're stressed, like I get it. Like I'll tell you the other day, I was working with this client. They were chewing my head off about XYZ thing. And I had to sit here, take a minute to collect myself before I actually came back to them. And that stuff is difficult. An example of share something that you're going through that's a little bit stressful and a little bit vulnerable so that then they can actually say, all right, I've got the space to actually share how I'm really feeling here. Because I think sometimes the whole employee and manager thing creates this weird middle layer of not being as honest as I think you really would be. And so I always try, and Jason does too, we try to break that down and say, there's no middle layer. We're just two people, two humans talking. Forget that there's any type of hierarchy, which there really isn't a lot at OmniLab because we're still pretty small. And let's just have a chat. And I think those things do help to address the burnout issues and make sure that we handle them if there is an issue.
Definitely. And it's funny, before we started recording, I noticed that you asked that follow-up question.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed because a lot of people, oh, sorry, but
Yeah.
that was cool. I like that. Yeah. It's I'm sure you bring that to your leadership styles.
Oh yeah, try to. I won't say I'm perfect. No one's perfect with anything. Certainly try to make sure that the follow-ups are there. Sometimes you get rushed and you're in a hurry and you just can't operate in the same way when you have the time. But I think we should all try to do that. It's the good old, hey, how are you? I'm good. You? Good. All right. Moving on. And I'll even do something funny. Some people probably don't like this, honestly, but I don't know, I do because it's funny. But I'll say, how was your weekend? If it was Monday, right? Yesterday was Monday. How was your weekend? And I did this with a client the other day and they're like, oh yeah, good. Normal. We didn't really do much. You watching new shows? Severance came out last Friday, season 2. Did you watch it by chance? And I'll just try to pick on something that's very specific to get into the weeds on something. Cause I think everyone naturally just doesn't, I don't know. How was your weekend's a very broad question. So you could say it's a bad question, but I think sometimes, offer up like, no, I'm actually really legit interested in what you did this weekend. And just not a weird way, just like, hey, what'd you do? Did you go hiking? Did you go bowling? Did you do something fun and different? Let's have a little fun with this. So we don't just jump into the programmatic nature of this meeting and make this all businessy. And so I think those little things help.
Yeah, for sure. And something that I've been thinking about a lot since COVID, it's been a couple of years now, but I think people are really craving connection
Yeah,
just across the board.
100%. I think we all are. We're stuck in our houses. A lot of us, most of us are working remote, probably seeing friends less, traveling less. Certainly, I know I am in that habit ever since really, even before COVID, but certainly since COVID. And I think it's been a harder habit to kick, which is why I think there's a lot of smaller events that are coming back and people are wanting to get back out there and meet people. I was just at an event actually last week in DC with the Nomadic team, so Natalie and team, which is really fun. Some also sad news at the same time, unfortunately, in DC at the airline crash. But yeah, I think getting out there, just being around people is so important. And I don't do it enough. I'll say it's one thing I do struggle with. I've gotten in a very bad habit of doing my thing and just family takes up a lot of time. And so I think it's just been when I've got the opportunity, I could go in and do this thing or travel here. I just know that's time away from family, time away from my wife. And so I've just made them a little bit more of the priority versus traveling all around trying to meet people. But I think you're right. I think people are craving that a lot more. And not just this, I think this is fine. This is great. It's virtual. I think we're all doing this. Like, I mean, where this isn't going to go away. But if you can augment that with a little bit of time, we're like, hey, cool. Are you going to be in town in DC like the next 3 months? Like just hit people up next time you're traveling around and put it on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm going to be here. If anyone's around, love to meet. Or if there's some people that are there, like just go meet them, go have coffee.
I just get so distracted. I mean, I even experienced that in my personal life. I'll see friends and say, oh, we need to do this more often. Then 6 months go by and the cycle starts all over again.
Exactly.
But that's just our culture. I feel like we have so much going on. There's so much stimuli and we're constantly thinking. And I feel like it honestly created a lot of ADHD, even if you don't
Well, there's way more.
have the diagnosis.
There's way more. You think about our parents and whatnot. We're talking pre-internet. Like you didn't know, certainly in a fast manner, what was even happening in Israel or China or any country around the world. And now there is a pressure to an extent, especially in DC, to understand like globally, like what's happening on in the world. That's a lot to keep up with. And I've honestly given up. I try to follow the news as best I can, but I think you need to pick your topics and pick your areas that you're going to spend time reading. And then the rest of it is just, you just can't know it all. There's too much. And then of course you've got the amount of ads that are out there. You've got the amount of people posting on various different social media, TikTok, you got Instagram, you got LinkedIn, you got all these people saying tons of stuff. More content's being produced every single day. There's some crazy stat. I forget the number, but it was something just like nuts about the amount of terabytes, petabytes or something like that of content being generated, not just from B2B, but just by brands in general. No one has the time to read all this stuff. It's just so much noise. Like just show me something good that I can get a read that's reliable, that I trust. And so I think sometimes it just requires more digging, unfortunately. You just need to, you pick your media sources, you pick your articles, you pick your people that you follow, and then I don't know, the rest, maybe you can open up a little bit of time to someone here and there, but the rest of it you got to ignore and just move on.
One of my rituals in the morning, I have my coffee, my couch, and I read something called 1440.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the diet. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it. I haven't really dug in and read much of it, but what do you like about it?
I like that it goes by topic. It'll have like finance, politics, and world affairs. And then all these custom articles at the end. Actually, speaking of marketing, what I'll do is only occasionally, I don't do it all the time, but there'll be this awesome article. Like, for example, there was this Questlove 50 years of SNL, which is a really cool video. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's
no, I haven't.
But I sent it to my entire list or my entire contacts. So it's like that nurturing, hey, I'm still thinking about you.
I totally.
Yeah. So it's funny. I apply marketing to my personal life.
I think that's great. I'd love to take a look. I feel like I've gotten so out of the know with a lot of various things, especially football and sports and whatnot. I wouldn't say I'm like the biggest sports fan in general. I enjoy watching if I'm in a social environment, but I'm not one to spend my whole Sunday watching football or anything like that, nor do I really have the time, which is the other thing. Like my kids don't want to watch football. They're too young. And so we just do other things. And so I was like, who is playing in the Super Bowl? I don't even know. It's in a week. I don't even know who's playing. And then I finally had to Google it. So, yeah, the Eagles got it. Yeah. Okay. That'll hopefully be a good game.
Yeah. Eagles versus the Chiefs. And of course, Taylor Swift.
Oh, Taylor. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the Chiefs are lucky to have Taylor Swift, even though she's not directly assisting, I don't think. Maybe I'm out of the loop there too, but just the relationship itself is enough for them to get, I'm sure, all the publicity in the world. She just has so much star power. So big. Her audience is huge. So anytime she does anything, everyone's looking.
Yeah, for sure. Before I get to the next question, I am loving these tangents. So thank you. Something I'm really curious about, if you could shatter one big myth about mental health and high pressure roles, what would it be and why does it persist?
One big thing from a mental health perspective, I think it comes back to what I said before. I do a couple of things, so it's really not one, so hard to narrow down. Exercise for me would be the number one, I think is the ultimate thing. So I try to work out, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week if I can. Occasionally I get off the rocker, but 45 times, usually running, weightlifting. I've been thinking about getting even into jujitsu a little bit just to do something different that I've never done before. And to have some type of community as well, because the gym is a little bit more, go in and do your thing, go out. But I do feel like exercise is something that is just a great way to release endorphins and get out there, stretch your legs, be out there with people, not behind a computer at a desk is probably one of the bigger things that I think is it's certainly helped me. But outside of that, I try to take breaks during the day. I think there's the old general lesson of every hour, take about a 10-minute break or so, especially for your eyes. Try to look out something out of your window, get some distance on it. So I just try to get up and walk around, stretch my legs. I also occasionally will do either push-ups or squats and stuff like that during the day. And so just like a good way, like even if you don't have time for the gym, you can still just literally step out from away your office, get some space, do something physical so that you can get your kind of brain going. Because occasionally I'll get incredibly cold just sitting. It just happens because your body's not moving. And so you'll sit there all day and it's been really cold outside. Our house is not that cold, but you sit down long enough and you're in a t-shirt, it starts getting cold. So I think that's why it's a nice reminder to say, hey, I'm going to do something to actually warm myself up. But those are probably the biggest things. There's probably some others I can think about, but reading, taking breaks, exercising, nothing fancy.
What I got from that is I think that the big myth is that you have to work from 7 to midnight to succeed.
Yeah.
And to go from 0 to a million ARR in 6 months and be funded by XYZ advisor or investor or whatever the case is, you just have to completely burn yourself out. But I think to your point, having that consistency and taking care of yourself is really, really the key.
Yeah. I think one thing I've always said is you do have to be a little bit selfish. You have to take care of yourself first from a mental perspective and from a physical perspective before you can really help others. I've always said that to my team. If you're not mentally right or you physically just don't feel well and you're sick or something's going on, you just need to go take a couple days, get better and come back because you're not doing anyone good. And all that's going to happen is you're going to get more sick or more stressed out or whatever the emotional reaction is. I think the hustle environment is a really dangerous one. Gary Vee is probably the biggest proponent of the hustle movement. And I think there is a case for working hard. And sometimes you do need to work some more hours, depending what you're trying to achieve and in what time frame. But I do think you got to listen to your body. And so at the same time, like if you're reaching that limit, and I know I put myself, I think we were talking about this before, I've reached that limit many times. And so I know what it's like. I feel this intense amount of stress during the day. Sometimes I get blurred vision. I'll get a headache. These things will happen. And it's a physical response to the stress to the point where I know I got to turn it all off. And I'm getting better about it now and managing it and making sure that I don't get to that point. So I don't need to take a day off or something like that to get myself back in order. But you need to listen to your body, make sure that that's the priority first, and then you push yourself to whatever limit you're comfortable with.
Definitely. This was awesome. Thank you so much. Where can we find you?
Easiest place is LinkedIn for sure. So Jonathan Bland, OmniLab, DM me if you've got questions on this and or other things. And yeah, it's the easiest place to find me. I'm on there pretty much 24/7.
Awesome. Same. Definitely to a detriment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Mind. If you enjoyed what you heard, leaving a review would be super helpful in getting this out into the world.
We got some big things coming, so stay tuned.
See you next time.